You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen TIG welders, each one flashing a sleek photo and a promise of perfect welds every time, only to end up with a machine that sounds like a lawnmower and leaves you fighting the arc on your first project? I've been there. The hesitation you feel isn't just about the price tag, it's about the time you'll spend setting up, the learning curve, and the risk of buying a unit that can't actually handle the material you need to work with. That's why today's review is all about cutting through the hype and figuring out if the Welder Maxstar 161 STL is the right fit for your shop or garage, or if you'd be better off looking elsewhere. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of work this welder is built for. The Maxstar series sits in the intro-to-mid tier of Miller's lineup, aimed at hobbyists, small shop owners, and anyone who does occasional TIG work on thinner steel or aluminum. If you're a weekend metal fabricator who builds a custom bike frame, or an automotive enthusiast restoring a classic and needs clean, precise welds on sheet metal, this is the class of machine you'd typically consider. It's not marketed as a heavy-duty production unit, so the expectations should be calibrated accordingly. The real-world setup experience is where the first hidden trade-off shows up. The Maxstar 161 STL requires a dedicated 120V outlet and a fairly robust circuit, something most residential garages already have, but you'll want to double-check the breaker rating before you plug it in. The machine itself is surprisingly compact. It sits on a small tabletop and the weight is manageable enough to move around a shop, but you'll still need a separate gas regulator and a foot pedal if you want the full TIG experience. That means there are a few extra accessories you have to budget for, which can push the total cost beyond the sticker price you see online. Once it's hooked up, the startup sequence feels intuitive. You turn the selector to TIG, set the amperage, and the machine fires up with a solid, steady arc almost immediately. For thin-gauge steel, think 18-gauge automotive sheet or hobby-grade tubing, the weld bead is clean and consistent, with minimal spatter. That's a practical strength you'll notice right away. The power output is smooth enough to let a beginner practice proper torch technique without fighting a flickering arc. In my own test on a small steel bracket, the weld held up to a gentle bend test without cracking, which is exactly the kind of confidence you need when you're still learning to control heat input. Now, let's be honest about the limits. The Maxstar 161 STL tops out at around 160 amps, which translates to a practical welding thickness ceiling of about 1/8 inch ch on mild steel. If you're trying to tackle a 1/4 inch ch plate or thicker structural steel, you'll notice the machine struggling to maintain a stable arc, and you'll end up with a lot of extra heat buildup that can warp thin sections. That's a trade-off you can't ignore if your projects regularly involve heavier material. Likewise, the unit doesn't come with an integrated AC output for aluminum, so you'll need to purchase a separate inverter or a dedicated AC module if you plan to weld aluminum frequently. It's not a deal-breaker for occasional aluminum work, but it adds another layer of cost and complexity. Another practical consideration is the duty cycle. The Maxstar's duty cycle at full output is roughly 30%, meaning you can weld for about 3 minutes before the machine needs a cool-down period. For short, precise runs, that's fine. But if you find yourself doing a series of continuous beads, say, welding a full chassis or a long pipe run, you'll be forced to pause frequently, which can disrupt workflow and lead to heat-affected zone inconsistencies. For a hobbyist who usually works in short bursts, that duty cycle is acceptable. For a small production shop looking to push volume, it becomes a bottleneck. So, who should actually buy this? If you're a DIYer who values brand reputation and wants a machine that's easy to set up for occasional TIG projects, the Maxstar 161 STL is a solid entry point. Its smooth arc, compact footprint, and Miller's reliable customer support give you a level of confidence that cheaper, no-name alternatives often lack. It also shines for tasks that demand aesthetic welds, think decorative metal art, custom brackets, or